All right, everybody. Welcome to this week's Corn Belt Umpires Zoom Lunch Clinic. I am Jake Samp. I got Connor Singheisen and Jason Faith with me today. We're going to be talking about strategies and resources to study the rule book. Rule knowledge is one of the 5 things that an umpire has control over, and you really can gain a lot of credibility as an umpire by a firm mastery of the rules. So if you got to eat, that's totally fine. We understand most people are on their lunch breaks. If you got questions, please do not hesitate to ask them. Either unmute, drop them in the chat, or anything like that will be just fine. But if you got a question, we don't want you leaving this clinic with a question about what we're talking about, or frankly, any other question. So we do these clinics once a week, every Wednesday. It is the same Zoom link each week. So you don't have to worry about sending out Zoom links each week, even though if you're registered with us or the CUA, we'll still send you the link every week, but it's going to be the same link. If you want, I can send you a calendar invite through Google Calendar or iCloud Calendar. If you have topics you want us to talk about, please let us know. We got some really cool topics coming up. Kind of talking more broad, and then we'll get more into the rule stuff here come February. So without further ado, I'll turn over to Connor and take over.
Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. As Jake said, we got a weekly Zoom session here. If you have a chance and can block off some time, January 31st is going to be a must attend for y'all. We have a very special guest coming in to talk about handling situations. I'm really excited to bring them on. So go ahead and earmark that if you have the ability to block it off on your calendar. Today, we're going to talk about rule study. So obviously, we all know what the rule book is. We all get one of those every year. We all should have a fairly firm grasp on the rules that we get or that we deal with, depending on the rule set. But a lot of times we struggle with how do we look stuff up, or how do we study in order to increase our rules knowledge? Because there's nothing better than being able to tell a coach, hey, this is the rule. They go back and look it up in the rule book, and then they're like, okay, yep, you're right. I'll stop talking now. And they generally tend to leave you alone when that happens. If you're lucky enough to ever have that experience where a coach goes and actually looks up the rule after you give them the rule reference, it's pretty awesome because you gain a lot of credibility, as Jake said, and they typically will leave you alone from then on. Even if it's a judgment call, if it's close, they're typically like, okay, you know what? They know what they're talking about. Clearly, they've proven that to me, and I trust them a little bit more than I normally would. So there are 3 things that will help you in the rule book that I think that a lot of people forget about, or a lot of people struggle with trying to locate rules. Number 1, we have the table of contents. Each rule book is different, but every rule book is derived off of the official baseball rules, which can be found online on the MLB website. So if you just search that 2024 OBR, it'll pop up, and they're free. You can view them for free. You can download it. But it's something that you can have access to at all times for free. So I highly suggest bookmarking that in your phone, especially when we get into baseball season, because it makes stuff a lot easier to look up and reference. Now, every rule set has modifications from that, but that's our base rule set, and we're going to be able to find just about everything that's not level specific in that rule book. So we have the table of contents. Everyone's broken down a little differently. OBR is a little confusing at times, I think, of how they break it down. NCAA is a little bit better. High school can be better, depending on the rule. But ultimately, your first step should be looking at the table of contents and review where those are at. The most important rule to know is the definitions. I think it's rule 4? I get them mixed up between OBR, NCAA, and high school. But the rule about definitions is going to be the key.
High school, I think everything is still rule 2. I know NCAA and OBR does it weird because like they have it in like a glossary, but it's still kind of rule 2. So like if you ever hear us talk about like Rule 2 definitions, that's what we're talking about.
If you understand the definitions of the words that are in the rule book, it's going to be a lot easier to use context clues to derive the meaning or the interpretation of the rule. But if you don't understand the definition of the rule, it's really hard to apply it. And regardless of what, for those of you that work different sports, you know exactly what I mean when you talk about basketball and block charge and definitions of legal guarding position and all that kind of stuff. All of our rules will play together to come up with an interpretation. So it's really important that we know all the definitions because that's how we determine how to apply that rule. There's an index or glossary in the back of every book, of every rule set, and that's a great place to start because it will give you page numbers most often, or at least rule references on where to go find that. So if you're not sure where something's located, go to. I typically start with the rules with the index in the back. It makes my life a lot easier. It's a lot quicker to navigate that rule book and figure out what I'm looking for. Now, with that being said, we also have to determine what the rule category is. So are we talking about the batter? Are we talking about the runner? Are we talking about the pitcher? Are we talking about whatever the case may be, pitching rules? Well, pitching rules in the OBR book are different, located differently and phrased differently and categorized differently than in the NCAA rule book and differently than the NFHS rule book. So if we start with the index, we can narrow down our category and figure out what we're actually talking about, and then go find that within whatever rule book we're looking at. So I typically will work off the index first, then table of contents, and then rule category if I can't figure it out from there. Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, I think when I sit and go and study the rules, I go based off the rule category. When I need to go find a rule quickly, the table of contents of the index are absolutely the right place to go as far as, when I go to study. I'm going to study base running rules today. I'm going to stick in the base running section. Yeah, I think you nailed everything else, though. Anybody got any questions right now about table of contents, rule categories, that type of stuff? Or I should say, does everybody understand what we mean when we say rule categories? Okay. Awesome.
So when we're looking through the rule book, what if the book doesn't say it is illegal? People seem to struggle with this a lot. If it's not explicitly outlawed in the rule book, by omission, which is a great legal term for Jake as he's going through law school here, by omission, then it's legal. If they don't say it's illegal, it has to be legal. If it was illegal, it would be in the rule book. So just think about that. Is this action legal or not? Okay, what does the rule book say? The rule book doesn't include it. That means it's legal. So that's something that I think that is really key to think about, because a lot of times, I had a rule protest in a game a few years ago about whether or not substitutes had to be listed on the lineup card. Well, the rule book we were working out of didn't have that rule. So by omission, it's not required. It's recommended, not required. So they actually outlined it in there. But ultimately, if it's not in the rule book, then it's legal. Now, that's something that I think is really key to remember as we go through studying rules and situations that we see and come across on the field. Jake, am I a co-host or no?
Yeah, you are, but I don't think you can control my screen.
Okay.
I got you, though.
So, everybody has to take a rules test for, well, I'm going to rephrase this. Everybody should have to take a rules test every year. Depending on what state you're in, you may or may not. South Dakota doesn't require you to take one every year, which is odd and something that I don't necessarily agree with, because I feel like we need to challenge people to get in the rule book because the rules change. South Dakota has long been a state that has played high school baseball with a mishmash of rules from different rule sets. And our test, in my opinion, does not adequately reflect the rule sets that we use most commonly. We're working towards that. I will always have access to the NFHS rule test for whatever year we're currently in. So I can definitely send that out if you all want. And I think we may send it out to the group of people that are, I may just send it out to everybody that's registered with SDUA. But I think it's really important that we challenge ourselves to get in the rule book and think about rules, because situations will happen from day one that we are not prepared for if we don't. So if you have to take a rules test, first step is print it out. I don't know a single, well, take that back. 99% of every high school rules test, you will have the option to print it. So print it out. That's the easiest thing I can tell you. Don't try to take it from a computer screen. It makes it difficult. You can't make notes. You can't do some of the things that I'm going to suggest here in a second. So print it. Front and back, however you do it, doesn't really matter. Just get it printed. And then what I would suggest is going through, reading each question out loud and underlining key parts of that question, because that allows you to identify what the question is really asking. Some of these questions get really long-winded and are poorly worded at times. So if we take the time to outline the important information, that allows us to narrow our focus when we get into the rule book and what rules we're actually looking at. And then I think it's really important that we also put the question in a language you can easily understand. Rewrite it if you have to. You know, R1, R2, like not everybody thinks in that form or that linear fashion. So if you have to draw out next to the question, draw a field, color in where the runners are at, whatever you have to do to make that question, to visualize that, because no matter how many times we can sit and look at a question and get the answer, we have to be able to visualize it on the field, because when it happens on the field, it's not going to happen exactly how it's written down. So we have to be able to visualize the question they're getting at and how we would apply it on the field. So find a way to make it as easy as possible for you to understand and rewrite it in the language that you use on a daily basis in the rules. Because when you have to explain that play, you need to be able to know what you're talking about.
Absolutely. And I echo the sentiments about South Dakota and their testing. Yeah, do the test. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we incorporated question. You know, we're gonna do 3 questions at the end, and we'll kind of talk about them. It's because, you know, we got to stay in the rule book, and if you're not required to get into the rule book, you're not gonna, unless you really make an effort to. So being in the rule book is really important. And yeah, everything you said, absolutely. Print it out. And yeah, try to understand and understand how you would explain your answer to a coach.
The next steps, and these should be labeled 4, 5, 6, but what the court is to determine what rules to look at. So are we talking about, you know, it may say R1, R2, bases loaded, full count, whatever, but what's the question actually asking? Is it asking about interference? Is it asking about obstruction? Is it asking about runners and interference? Is it asking about a balk, right? So where the core concept will tell us what rule to look at. And it's easy to identify that. I typically circle that because I've outlined other things, and I have a system to where I outline the important information. I circle the core concept, so I know that when I go look this up, I have access to it. I know exactly what rule to go look at. The other thing I always do, and this will kind of come down to step 3. So utilize the index first, then go to the rule covering it if it's not outlined in the index. If you know what the core concept of the question is, right? All right, we're talking about the balk rule. Go look at the balk rule in the rule book. We're talking about base awards. Go find the base awards section. We're talking about base running. Go find the base running section. Each rule book is going to list it differently. So we can go to the index, find the term's not in there. We need to figure out what the core concept is and go look that up in the rule. And there are lots of times where we have to piece rules together to get the correct answer, which is why I always take my OBR rule book, right? And then I take my NFHS or NCAA rule book, whichever one I'm working with, and I will write down the reference for each rule book in the other ones. So OBR is our base set. I want to know where to go to look for base running in the OBR rule book, because it may not be specified in NFHS, which means we default to official baseball rules. So I'll write down base running is rule 8 in OBR. So I'll put 8.02 or whatever the case may be for the force play slide rule. And that's where I go to look for it when I have to compare rules across different rule sets, or I need to go look for information that may not be specifically outlined in NCAA. Because all these are pieced together to work together, but they're all based off of OBR. Jake, do you have anything?
Yeah. Not really on this. I will say law school has absolutely effectively prepared me for taking the NCAA rules test. And what you're talking about with piecing multiple rules together, you absolutely nailed it. And that's sometimes the difficult part when you got to start parsing 2 or 3 rules together to get to the right answer. But yeah, I like the technique of having the OBR book out as well. I think that's a good, useful tool. I guess I'll take the next
Jake.
couple ones on.
Hang on, Jake. Go back one. So when I look at the rules test, typically you get 2 opportunities to take a test, right? Go through the test by yourself and answer the questions how you can, and then compare answers. But when you compare answers with somebody, have rule references written down. Because I can't tell you like the amount of times where I've looked at a rule and I'm looking at the wrong rule to apply to a situation. Or somebody has we disagree on something, and if we have a rule reference, it's really easy for us to come to a consensus and get that question correct. But write your rule references down so you know where to refer to. If you miss one, you can go back and look it up and figure out why. Because ultimately, if you have to get an 80%, you don't want to take it by yourself twice if you have to. But you also want to be able to compare rule answers with rule book terminology on your test.
Connor, that point that you make about having 2 opportunities on it kind of brought me back to our previous topic about how South Dakota only requires 1 test ever, and kind of the negatives of that. The good part about having tests year after year is you're able to collaborate with other umpires. And like, if you were here like super early on before we started recording, we were talking about the NCAA test. We have a group in the area, and we get on a Zoom call and we go through the test. And the expectation is you come there with your test done. You're not just freeloading answers from people, but you talk about these plays. And I've had some rules meetings where it's like, or test meetings, I should say, were like in and out in 30 minutes. But others you get like 2 hours because you start getting into these discussions. Then you get the what ifs, and it is truly a great opportunity to learn and master rules.
Simply getting the answers from somebody else doesn't mean you know the rule when the play happens in your lap and you got to make a decision on it. You can't just say, "Oh, that's answer A." So know the rules.
Absolutely.
Be prepared for those meetings.
So we'll talk a little bit about just general rule study, and finding the time. And for me personally, there's pre-law school and then in law school, and I've had to change a little bit how I've studied now that I've been in law school. I try to stay in the rule book about at least an hour to an hour and a half per week during the off season, and that gets up a little bit more during the regular season. And it's you find time. Anybody that's ridden with me, I got multiple rule books in the door of my car. So if I'm sitting at a baseball field and I show up, a half hour beforehand, there's a perfect opportunity to grab a rule book for 15 minutes and put some effort into studying the rules. Sometimes game times get moved or there's miscommunications. He's not on the call today, but there's an umpire at Marshall. We were doing an amateur doubleheader, and all of a sudden we found ourselves with a 2-hour break. And it was, we had rule books everywhere, mechanics manuals everywhere, and we were just quizzing each other. It was fantastic. When I first started reffing hockey, someone told me, like, put a rule book on your toilet rather than reading and this was 15 years ago, but rather than reading the Reader's Digest or the back of the Febreze bottle, grab the rule book. So that was a tip I took very early on, and I have the rule book on my phone, got it in my car, and got it right here. I guess as far as multiple sports are concerned, I think the rules study versus the mechanics study, that's the big difference, because you can't go and call a charge in a football game. And so I'm going to let Connor kind of talk more about that, because I guess you're probably better at talking about that one than I
Um, yeah. So I work three sports at three different levels, or two different levels for each sport, which means I have a lot of rule sets to learn and memorize, and it gets tough. It really does, to find time to study all three rule sets. Um, I'm in the middle of basketball season right now, trying to prepare for baseball season, and it's difficult to stay on top of that stuff and stay on top of two rule sets for basketball and try to learn one for baseball. Luckily, I put in the time over the years to learn those, and a lot of those haven't changed. With that being said, you have to find ways to bounce ideas off of each other. The good thing about basketball and most baseball that I work, I typically have at least some car time with my partner or partners. The casebook, the interpretations, like all that stuff is really key. Like, we'll sit there in the car and we'll pull out the casebook and we'll go through and just take turns reading a question. And everybody has to answer a question and get into discussions that way, because that sharpens our mind for the game at hand that day. Do you know the rule, and can you apply the rule? And those are the two basic concepts of officiating. If you know the rule, but you don't know how to apply it, you don't know the intent of the rule, you're going to be out there swimming for your life. So take time and prepare as you get closer to the season. Theoretically, you start with whatever sport you're working first, and a couple months out or a month out, you start getting into the rule book for that sport. And then you're in that sport, rule book for that sport for the season. And then as you get further and further into the season, I typically will draw down my time in the football rule book, and I'll study more on the basketball rule book. My college basketball season starts typically end of October. So I'm usually beginning, late September, early October, I'm starting to get into basketball mode. That being said, I'm still devoting game time and car time, preparing myself for the game I'm working that night or that afternoon. And then as I get further into basketball season, okay, I slow down on basketball. Got to pick up the high school rule book and get into that. And luckily I've been working that long enough that I have pretty good grasp on those rules. And it makes it easy to find stuff when I need to. And then as I get closer to baseball season, then I start weaning myself off of basketball rule study and get into baseball rule study. Legitimately, I could be on a Zoom call every night, at least one every night, about a rule set that I'm working currently or working in the future. Officiating at higher levels is a year-round endeavor. They want you looking at stuff and studying stuff year-round and on Zoom calls, and there's always opportunities to make yourself better through those Zoom calls. But you have to balance that with family time, right? I've got a little 11-month-old girl, and she is taking up a ton of time right now because she's starting to walk, chasing her all over the house. And it's like, okay, well, how do I make sure that I get to spend time with my job, getting all those requirements done, my family, my wife and my daughter, whatever else I have to do in regards to regular life, and then also officiating. So I kind of prioritize what I need to be doing at certain times. So Alan Steckel has an NCAA rules call. It's every other week. I might make one of those a month until we start getting the seasons on top of us, because I've got basketball seasons stuff going on. And then I've also got, I had a referee call for football every Wednesday night. Well, if I have a baseball rules call at 7 and I have a football rules call at 9, that leaves me really an hour from when I get home to start a one rules call, an hour in between, and then whatever time I had to do to get stuff done after. So you really have to balance it. But study what you need to study in the moment. And as you get closer, start to wean yourself off of one rule set and get into the next. Um, you should be at a point where if you read the rule book enough and you officiate for long enough, most of the rules are similar and you understand that and you retain that knowledge from year to year. But ultimately, you have to make sure that you're ready to go for the first pitch of the baseball season.
I guess I'll hit this part here. So when you're studying, break the rule book down in a way that'll increase your comprehension. Connor talked a lot about this already. Know the rule categories. So if I go to the table of contents of the NCAA book, which is the one I have sitting right next to me, if I can find it, I will find that Rule 1 is the game, playing field, and equipment. Rule 2 is definitions. Rule 3 is game personnel, their duties. Rule 7 is batting, so on and so forth. That's how these rule books are divided up. So I want to go in and discuss or go work on my understanding of the force play slide rule. Well, okay. I'm going to make sure I use the rule book, to my advantage, figure out where the force play slide rule is, and then I'm going to go there. And then what I'm going to do, and I will actually do this, is I will find the force play slide rule. It's right here. And I also annotate my rule books. And so I don't know if the lighting's going to allow, but like I have some keywords highlighted and I haven't really annotated the force play slide rule as much. And where I annotated it, there was a rule change that we had last year that kind of changed the application of the force play slide rule at the college level. But so if I'm reading the rule, on any force play, the runner in the vicinity of the base must slide on the ground between the base and in a direct line between the two bases. Okay, that's one sentence. The big things that I take away from that right away to help with my comprehension is force play, vicinity of the base, slide on the ground, and then in a direct line between the two bases. Like those are my key phrases that I'm gonna if a coach comes out and goes, why was that force play slide interference call? Coach, because by rule he has to slide in a direct line between the two bases and failed to do so. Coach pulls the rule book out and it literally says slide in a direct line between the two bases. So find your key. The way I do it is I find my key phrases if I was going to identify or explain the call to the coach. That's the technique I use. Connor, I don't know if you do something different. Jason, I don't know if you're in a different boat as well.
Yeah, that's pretty similar to what I do. Try to find key phrases that I can remember and recall and the things that matter, right? There are words in there that you actually will need to pull out on the field and explain to a coach. You also have to know what language the coach is going to understand. And that's part of that understanding the game and having that feel for the game is if I tell a coach something and they don't understand it, they're going to initially get mad because they're going to be like, oh, I don't know what the heck he's talking about. And it makes them mad because they don't understand it. So you have to be able to simplify things as much as possible and keep those responses short and sweet. So develop those phrases and how you would explain a slide to a coach as they happen, as you're watching a game, as you are umpiring a game. It may be a routine play and in between pitches. If you're in the field, find something to do that keeps you in tune to the game and prepares you for that next pitch or that next situation that happens. So I may say, boom, fourth place slider, bang, whatever. If the coach doesn't come out, I'm still going to have that conversation in my head. So when they do come out the next time, I'm prepared for it. as far as breaking the rule book down and increase comprehension, I highly despise the way the rule book is ordered. I think it's I think it could be made a lot simpler if you put, I read the definitions first, and then I start with what do I need to know to start a game, right? Legality of the field and equipment. That's my next rule. Okay, what's next? The pitcher. We have to have a pitcher. What are the rules surrounding the pitcher? And then break it down by that. And then I reorder it and I read it the way I need to read it in order for me to know from set A, from the moment I show up at the game, what has to happen for that game to run smoothly. And I will highlight rules and I will, write, like I said, I write stuff in the margins. I'll say, okay, this rule links to this rule. The definition is here. Because when I go look up that rule and I flip to that page, it'll save me time in between games, in the car, whatever the case may be, of going, okay, well, now I got to go back to the rule book and find this word and then go back and find this page. So I'll put notes as far as what page or what rule reference I need to look at next to connect the dots to make this rule make sense to me.
Jason or Russ, anything on that?
That's covered pretty thoroughly. Good work.
Attaboy, Connor. All right. So the last thing we're going to talk about are just some tools to help with rule study. I guess just you can't sit and just read the rule book and go umpire a game. There are a lot of things that go into it. So, buy a case book. You can get them online. They are invaluable because they have hypothetical plays for you to think through and to sort of come up with an explanation as to how you would explain the call. I mean, is this forced play slide rule? Yes. Here's why. And they literally tell you on the facts of the question determine that it's forced play slide rule. As Connor said, get an OBR book. That is the base rule set that is only superseded by the modifications of a rule book that you're working. So if you know that, you're in a pretty good starting point.
Like I said, that one's free and online. You can go look at that. It's a PDF on the Major League Baseball website, or just Google 2024 OBR or official baseball rules.
And I believe if you go to the SDUA website, sdumpires.org, he's got the 2022 PDF up. But nothing's changed that would be affecting any baseball in South Dakota from what's posted on the SDUA website. So it's absolutely free. I mean, it's a PDF. It works great. And the search feature, that's one thing I love about that. Referee.com is a fantastic resource. And so is NFHS Learn. Connor, I'll pull up referee.com if you want to talk about NFHS Learn quick.
Yeah. NFHS, oh, you're pulling it up and you're okay. I thought you were talking about it in
I'll
order.
pull it up.
So NFHS Learn has a bunch of free resources, videos. The one thing I would shy away from if I were you on NFHS Learn is the mechanics videos for like 2-person and 3-person umpire systems, because South Dakota does not use the NFHS officials manual for baseball. We use the CCA manual, which can also be found online for free. So there are lots of really good videos about plate mechanics, plate work, plays at the plate, plays at second base, forced play slide rule, runners. There's all kinds of great videos on there for free. There's also stuff you can buy and get advanced training for, and put a little bit of money into. But it's a free website. It's NFHSlearn.org, I believe. But it's a fantastic resource for high school rules and high school rules applications. And I think that's something that we need to talk more about, is how to learn high school rules because South Dakota is inching closer and closer to verbatim NFHS rules for most of their leagues.
So I did a Google search, CCA umpire manual, free download. And it's right here. The other thing you can do is every Monday we do Mechanic Mondays. Go like Corn Belt Umpire Association on Facebook. We break down one mechanic per week. So it'll look something like, that doesn't matter. But you'll get the opportunity to see, it'll be the picture and then kind of a little short explanation, and then we'll link it to a video as well. So yeah, there's free good resources out there where you don't have to go and pay $20 for the book. Referee.com is another fantastic resource as well, and this covers everything. If I remember correctly, referee.com is run by the National Association of Sports Officials, or NASO. If you're not a member of NASO, it doesn't hurt to join if you think it's a benefit to you. Do your research on it. They have a lot of great stuff. They got some free guides. We'll get into the referee training center here in a sec, but they have, stuff on the art of officiating. That's your situation handling, stuff like that. Health and wellness, something we talked about last week. They have a great digital library of tools. They got rules challenges. You can get free quizzes. You get weekly emails. That's just, some of them are, I guess their typical weekly emails are more broad, not just central to baseball. The Referee Training Center, if you remember, you get some nice discounts, and they got a lot of great products here just for baseball. As Connor said, be very careful with the mechanics if you're working in South Dakota, because we use the CCA mechanics, not the NFHS mechanics. But they got some great tools, some good study guides out there, case books. And if you do want a hard copy of the CCA book, you can buy it on there. A guide to base awards, how to handle situations. Lots of great resources out there. So unfortunately, Justin left, because Justin used to have a fantastic podcast. But there's some awesome podcasts out there. The best one that I've been listening to most recently is Sean Johnson's Timeout with PSOA. He's done a really good job with some of the baseball ones, and then just the general officiating ones as well. A lot of the stuff he's going to cover, all sorts of different sports, but he's got a really good set of baseball and just general officiating podcasts. One of them he had on time management, and so Connor was alluding to time management earlier today, and Sean did a really nice job on that podcast. He drops those every
Wednesday.
Yeah, every Wednesday morning is when those drop. And then lastly, Facebook groups.
There are lots of.
Yeah,
I'll cover this one
time
because I got to talk to my student staff about this all the time. So there are 1,000,001 Facebook groups on umpiring baseball. You really have to filter through the content that's on there to find the good stuff. However, if you find a play or a situation, feel free to look through the comments, but don't take their word for it. Go look up the correct answer to that play in your rule book, in your mechanics manual, in your casebook, and learn by looking it up and verifying. There's a lot of wacky, zany, weird stuff that happens in those groups. They get off topic a lot. There's a lot of people that subscribe to the MSU rulebook, and they just make up an answer that makes sense, or something they heard, or something they saw. Ultimately, if you are in those Facebook groups, find the plays that make sense to you and verify the answer that's given. Don't take it at its word. Don't take it at its thing. It's like anything else you find online. Anybody can post anything they want. I liken it to Wikipedia a lot. Anybody can edit those pages. Anybody can put whatever up there they want and change wording and change phrases and change context. But take the play, break the play down, go look it up and find out the answer on your own. I am a part of a lot of those groups. I hardly ever post anything. I can't remember the last time I commented on something that wasn't like somebody asked a question about how to get into umpiring or a gear question. I might jump on some of those, but stay away from posting on the situations. It's a rabbit hole you can get into that nothing good can come from a lot of times. So if you are a part of those, look at the plays, look up the rules, inform yourself, so that when that happens on the field, your answer isn't, well, they said this was the answer in a Facebook group I'm a part of, because that's just going to get you into trouble. I like I said, I think there can be a lot of really good content in those, but ultimately it's on you to inform yourself of what the correct answer is. So take everything there with a grain of salt, look it up for yourself, and find the right answer.
I'm going to open my video up here because I got one more comment about the Facebook groups. If you find a facial hair post, send it to Vaith. He's got a nice collection of those. I knew I'd get a laugh out of there. But yeah, these Facebook groups, the plays in there are really good. You can get some good equipment stuff out of it. But then you got guys that want to sit and start complaining about facial hair and whatnot. And you just get into some of the dumbest rabbit holes possible. So be very careful with Facebook.
Russ, did you have something on this topic?
Yeah. Speaking of rabbit holes in Facebook, they're somewhat synonymous. My apologies for being just a little bit late, and if this has been covered, again, my apologies. But a shameless plug for an upcoming clinic on the 20th, where you might learn some rules and some mechanics things, and you can attend, I believe, for free as well.
I don't think we've hit that yet, so thank you.
So
yeah, we haven't
I'm
talked
sorry
about
that. Well, we went down a rabbit hole with Facebook, so I suppose I thought I'd do.
All right, I think that's all. Jake, is there another slide?
Oh yeah, no, we got to get people in the rule book. We talked about studying the rule book. Let's get them in the rule book.
Yeah.
All right. Other tips and tricks. I think we've kind of already covered it, just as far as, you know, the little rabbit holes that we've gone down on this fantastic Wednesday Zoom clinic. So I am going to launch. I'm going to launch a poll. I did not put answer slides together for this. Question 1. I'm going to launch this quick. And I will have everybody answer that real quick. Hope everybody can answer it.
Jake, I can't select an answer.
It's probably because you and I are co-hosts.
Oh, okay. I was going to get it wrong anyways.
And for some reason, I am not showing the results on my one computer, but I am seeing it on the other computer. So that's interesting.
Just noticed it's in NFHS instead of, I was in NCAA think mode.
Oh, if you were in NCAA mode, you got that question correct, but it's different in high school. I took
Well,
basically,
that's not fair. I haven't worked high school ball in 20 years.
yeah, just apply the old rule.
Life's not fair, Russ.
Make sure you explain the college rule because that's on the college test too this year.
Yes, it is.
Then you
Yes, it
cheat and
is.
you don't look it
I-
up.
I will tell you, I went into the spreadsheets and tests that we had, and these are all tests, or these are all questions directly taken from the NCAA test. Okay, so we got enough people that have said stuff, so I'm going to end the poll here. Are you able to see? No, it does not do it that way. Okay, so for some reason, do you guys see the results? Or does it just say zeros?
Yeah, no, it shows us what we picked, and it shows us if we were to get it wrong, the correct answer.
Okay. So actually, the correct answer is C. It's a ball, but we're awarding the batter first base because of the because it's a hit by pitch. So we're going to call time first. Because they intentionally allowed themselves to be hit by a pitch in the batter's box. You still call time. It's a ball. It's not a hit by pitch because you're going to call it based on the location of the pitch. So most people said this is just a hit by pitch. This is just a real technical part of the rule. Does that make sense why it's C and not B?
Well, I feel like either way it was going to be ball four. That's obvious at the 3-2 count.
Mm-hmm.
But the high school doesn't allow the batter to freeze if the ball's within the confines of the box. Is that what you're saying?
There's no freeze
Correct.
rule. There is, if they intentionally permit it to touch them, it's that old, they got to make an effort to get out of the way.
And we're gonna use some judgment, like if able to
Yeah, don't.
make effort.
It's the pitcher's responsibility to throw the ball between the batter's box lines. So err on the side of penalizing the person who screwed up.
Yeah,
By philosophy.
correct. Agreed.
Either way, we're putting the batter on first base.
So the technicality here in high school baseball is it's ball four he goes, not because he got hit by the pitch.
Correct.
So that count changes. If it's 2-2 and he gets hit and it's clear on a ephus.
Yeah.
And the coach comes out, you might have that argument. And you have to know that it's a ball and not strike three.
Copy that.
Go to the next one. I guess while I'm pulling that one up, does anybody have any questions on that?
I do. What would it be for college?
B.
Set in the
Jack.
first. You can freeze in college in the box.
Oh yeah. It's B in college. Yep.
Okay.
Correct. This is a freeze question. There's a freeze. So yeah, it's B in college.
Thank you.
Whoa, I thought college was if you allow the pitch to hit you, it doesn't matter where it's at, it's a strike.
Used to be. It changed.
Yep.
Last year, 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's the freeze rule. So if they're in the batter's box and they're frozen, it's not automatic if they intentionally get hit by the pitch.
So
And that's only if it's in the confines of the batter's box.
Yes.
What about the Augie playoff game a year or two ago?
That's different.
That's
He didn't-
different.
That's different.
He
He
moved
did
in
not
good.
allow him. Yes. He went to he hit the pitch did not hit him.
Yep. Okay.
He absolutely nailed that call.
No, I knew he got it right at the time, but that's still the same because
Yep.
he moved into it. Okay.
Yep. I will launch poll number 2.
Jake, I've got to get going.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah,
I'll take care of the rest of this.
I actually do too.
Y'all, thank you for your time today. We'll see you next week.
Look forward to it.
See you, Connor.
Jake, I gotta roll too, but
All right, we'll see you.
peace.
All right, so we're going to talk here through this one. And if anybody has any questions on any of these questions, I can certainly say after and try to provide some more insight on these. So I can remember what I put down here. Can everybody see the next poll question?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Give you guys a sec to take a look at it. Still looking for a couple more answers here. I am so happy we have a mixed bag of results here because we got something to learn. I love this. All right, I'm gonna end the poll here. I'll share the results here with you guys. So the correct answer in this case is A. So what this question is testing is ball status, base award, time of pitch, time of throw. This is wait, did I read this right? Excuse me. This is I am incorrect. The answer is B on this one because there is not a attempted play of R1. So this is 2 bases, time of pitch, not time of throw. And I'm looking at the calendar here, and on February 21st, we will actually be discussing this specific play way more in depth. Last one. Option. Pull the poll up here quick. All right, there's the last one. All right. So I'll end this one here quick because I realize we're coming up on time and whatnot. So we got 80% of people said B is the correct answer. 20% said A. The correct answer is B. If this is an attempt to retire a runner, or as the rulebook states, for the purpose of making a play, this is not a block. So again, this is one of those wording of the questions, and I take these directly from the test. I don't modify these. And so the most correct answer is B, because we're looking at the exception here. Any questions on why that's B? Hearing none, thank you guys. I'm going to stop sharing here. I will shut the recording off.